Okay, so why don't you come up? Everybody on the next panel, you know who you are. I'm just going to quickly say that we think that underlying what you just heard is the fact that discrimination against us is tolerated. Some of it is supposedly technical. There could be a bill saying that you're not allowed to discriminate against LGBT people, as there is in IVF coverage, but then they interpret it to say that if we have medical infertility, let's say if our wombs don't work, we will get the same assistance as everybody else, but we do not have a condition or a disease. We consider our infertility to be structural, and the good news is that with Resolve, we've created a more effective, we hope, legislative strategy that does not just add non-discrimination clauses in bills, but instead redefines infertility to include also the structural infertility. And we've done that by adding the word status to condition and disease. So now, and adding a line saying the inability to form a family without assisted reproduction. And also added a clause saying that you cannot deny the benefits on the basis of the fact that those benefits are not going to come to you, because that has also been an obstacle. Because they would say, okay, we consider you to be structurally infertile. Bring us your medical bills, we'll pay them. But the medical bills are for the surrogate and the egg donor. So Resolve, together with us and the National Center for Lesbian Rights, came up with new legislation, new model for legislation. It passed in Illinois. So if you live in Chicago or anywhere else in Illinois or work there, right now you have these benefits that we do not. And we are very close to passing it in New Jersey. Anybody here from New Jersey? So there's a bill that is being introduced in New Jersey to do the same thing. And then some of us are not even covered through our employers that are subject to these mandates. And for those, we are doing more and more lobbying, once again with Resolve, and you'll hear more about it tomorrow or Sunday, when we talk about coverage at work. So we are structurally infertile, and we're missing the most important organs that are required for reproduction, which means that we are the most financially challenged when we're trying to build our families. And why is this tolerated? It is tolerated, as Nicholas and Corey told us and others, that's because people don't consider us, I mean, we have a lot of allies, but society, the culture, doesn't consider us to be childless, doesn't consider us to be people that are in some way have a problem. They consider us many times as accessorizing with a child. As this is, we can have a dog, or we can have a child, or we can go on a vacation. Gay men that do not have children are not considered by society to not be fully expressing their humanity. But when they look at a woman, they feel that way. So it is that aspect, the fact that people like us prioritizing family to the extent that some of us are going through really very extreme financial difficulties to afford that, sometimes we're even being looked at suspiciously, let alone not getting the support society provides to the infertile woman and her supportive husband, which is the cliche. So we brought up here a few more people who've been in the slideshow, as I mentioned before. I'm going to let them introduce themselves quickly and also tell us about what they have done, because now we're talking about people that already have children through surrogacy, and what they're doing personally out of motivations that are apparently perhaps common, but were very unique to each one of them. And how, let's start with that. First, tell us who you are, a little bit about your family, and what is it that you do for visibility and other type of activism. Sure. Let's start with
Hello, everybody.
Pat.
My name is Pat Dolan. So y'all might have heard, actually my daughter, my husband just left because she's being a little fussy, it's the witching hour. But she was born about a year ago, November 3rd. And after she was born, one of the things that just almost like obsessively was thinking about was just how do I make this world a better place for my daughter? She's growing up. And one of the things that I kind of came to the conclusion of was there need to be more gay parents. As my daughter's growing up, I don't want her to be the only child in school with two daddies or, having same-sex parents. And so I kind of went on this journey of thinking, like, how do you make like more gay parents in the world? My husband discovered men having babies years ago. Part of the reason why we are parents and the journey that we went on was he came to a conference just like this, discovered our own fertility clinic, which he actually now works for. And through the research I did, discovered this Gay Parents Assistance Program, GPAP. And every year, I can't run marathons. I know somebody up here, I know other folks can. I can't run marathons. There's a lot of things I can't do. But I can go swimming. I can jump in really cold water. And so every year I've been doing this thing where I jump in the ocean. Sometimes it's New Year's, sometimes it's football Sunday, in the middle of the winter, and I try to raise money. And doing it for about 5 years, I think at this point, raised over $25,000 for different things. And this past year, I had to do it for my daughter. And so chose Men Having Babies, and we raised just over $5,000. And the thing that I think is just kind of amazing about that is, it exposed the world to our family. Every time I introduce my daughter, our family, to other people, it's like you feel those barriers breaking down a little bit, of just, these preconceived notions of what parenthood can be. So yeah, that's what I've done. I've actually become extremely passionate about this idea that everybody who wants to be a parent should be a parent. If you have love to give, you should be able to give that without any barriers to that. And the idea that it's inherently costly for two men. You have to pay money if you're two men to have a child, regardless of that journey to parenthood. I just think is it's something that needs a lot of attention towards. And I do think in my mind that this is one of the next great things that people haven't necessarily thought of, but the more people that you meet who's being exposed to our families, I think the more we're going to find advocates there. So that's my story.
Great.
All right.
I don't have a microphone, but I'm a high school teacher, so I figure you can all hear me. My name's Frank Nelson, and Frankie Nelson. I'm a board member, but I'm also a dad to a 8-year-old boy, and my husband's back there, and our son's out in the lobby listening to his iPad because this is boring to him. But we didn't become parents to become advocates at all, and by some fluke, my son was born 2 weeks late, and we were sitting in a city outside of Toronto waiting for him to be born, and it happened to be World Pride in Toronto. It was in 2014. He was born on World Pride. And we had a photographer in our room who took a photo, a beautiful photo. It happened to capture me holding my son for the first moment with the surrogate or husband, the midwife, and her helper all in the photo. And the photographer asked the next day if she could post the photo on Facebook, and we were busy at home with a newborn. I said, sure. And over the next few days, the photo was liked by hundreds of thousands of people, then 1 million people, and then it was shared around the world. And advocacy sort of came to us in a way. And I mean, the first thing I want to say, the first thing that for us started was I work for the Toronto District School Board, or I probably shouldn't say where I work, but they offered, I went through our medical data, and they said they offered compensation for all IVF drugs. And when I went to apply, they said, no, that's for women. And I grieved the board, and I won our case, and fought that. So that was the first thing that we did, and now now it's inclusive of everyone with surrogacy. And that was not, I have to say, that was not meant to help everyone else. It was meant to help me in the moment, but it went on to help a lot of other people, which I'm very happy about. But what started us really in advocacy, I mean, for one, Ron brought me on as a board member, and I've been advocating Ron to bring men having babies to Canada so that we can have wonderful conferences like this, because we don't have them. It's a lot more difficult to sort of find surrogates and find information in Canada. But the other thing is that in 2016, a unknown fascist party leader named, what's her first name? Giorgia Meloni. In Italy, there was I don't know if you've heard of her, but she's now the Prime Minister of Italy. She, during a campaign in Italy in 2016, they were having a referendum over, I think, adoption for gay couples. And she stole our photo from the internet, and we have, my husband's Italian, so we had lots of family in Italy who kept sending us pictures of us all over the country it was this beautiful photo with a big banner that said, "Who's going to fight for the rights of this child? They'll never know their mother." And so we've been suing over the last few years, 6 years now, we've been suing now the now Prime Minister of Italy. And at the time, she was some random fascist, anyways. It's been now that fascist party, I mean, this is ongoing. Our last hearing, this is ongoing, but this has brought about a more advocacy role for us. And we ended up writing a few books about this because we really wanted to sort of take back this photo that was now being used for hate. And we wrote a book about our journey, and we advocate through our website. We have a blog through many different things, and that's sort of what we do. And in Toronto, we are regulars on a parenting panel on one of our morning shows. So we are just very vocal and we try and be very visible in Canada, and sort of that's how we got involved in our advocacy journey.
Wonderful.
My name is Michael, so I'm actually from Spain, and I work in the surrogacy community, so I help families, I help you guys build your families, basically. And we have 3 kids, so we do run a marathon, but at home. It is challenging, and sometimes when I have IPs come to me and they're like, "Oh, we want to have kids," I'm like, "Do you want one of mine?" I'm like, so yeah, we have a 5-year-old boy and twin girls, and we started advocating a lot for surrogacy from the very first day, basically, because we have other issues in Europe, right? You guys are fighting for medical coverage. We are fighting to protect our kids from being bullied by the government and stuff like that. Sorry, I get emotional because it's hard when you build your family and you have constant attacks from people out there. Luckily, in our lives, we are not attacked by anyone. Actually, the general population does not feel any kind of, I would say, hostility against surrogacy. It's really the government that is like putting a really bad picture out there, right? And right now we are facing, we were gonna face a new change in one of the bills where they wanted to add surrogacy to a bill against violence against women. And a part of that bill was going to be like to go against families and stuff like that, right? So that was taken out because, of course, the European court said, well, you can't go after these families, right? They're doing something in a country where it is legal. But now they want to basically open up campaigns to educate people about how surrogacy is wrong, right? And so, as a parent, it's hard to think that my kids will get comments at school like, "Oh, what your dads did is wrong. You abused a woman," and stuff like that, right? So we're dealing with that here. something which I don't think in the US you deal with. Like surrogacy is something people think is beautiful, and I think, the government here has other things to worry about. So I've been helping IPs for 5 years now, intended parents for 5 years now. Best part of my job is when I actually see them with their kids. And I also talk on a radio show back in Spain once a week where we talk about being a parent. And of course, I'm always the only one who's gay, who has 3 kids, who works in surrogacy. I'm like, total taboo, right? I also, when we have like those campaigns to like talk about surrogacy and show people that it's good, I try to help the associations there by like talking with surrogates. Oh, can I record you like talking about these topics and so on, so that they actually can see that these women are not being taken advantage of. They are very smart women, very loving women, and they're not being forced into doing this. But it's a constant battle, because once you will show those videos of surrogates talking about how beautiful this surrogacy journey is for them, then they go back to, the kids are being taken away, they're not being told where they come from and so on, which is totally not true. I'm very proud of how my family was built. We have an amazing relationship with our surrogate, who's from Canada. Our kids, my son knows how to explain how he came into this world, even though he thought it was funny one day to tell one of his friends that, my mom died, and so my dad's took me in and stuff like that. And I was like, what are you talking about? But he will explain, like, I was in her belly, his sisters were in her belly, and we actually have a very open relationship with our donors as well. So we use 2 donors. Our kids are not genetically linked. So we also advocate a lot for the genetic part is not important, right? It's not what makes your family. So obviously, there's going to be one dad that's not the genetic father, but that doesn't mean that he's not the father of my child, right? And it's the same between my kids, right? They are sisters and brothers, right? And it doesn't matter if you have a different sperm donor or a different egg donor, right? So we talk a lot about that. Our egg donor was actually, she's American, and she came to our house 2 weeks ago. She spent a weekend with us, and she was so happy to see how they were growing. She felt weird, not in a bad way. She felt weird to see like little people that looked like her. We were very open with our son from the very beginning, even though he didn't really understand. I think he's just tired of even hearing the story. Even though I'm like so proud of it, I always want to talk about it. He's like, yeah, I had a surrogate, I was in a belly. Like he's just tired of even talking about it, because for him it's like, it's nothing, it's not out of the ordinary, right? Having 2 dads is super normal for him. Having a surrogate is super normal for him. He doesn't even see that there's a difference, right? And that's what we wanted for our kids, and we want our daughters to feel that way as well. They're 3, and they met their egg donor as well, which was beautiful. They don't really understand it. They will say, she gave an egg to our daddies, and then they put that in Chantal's belly. But I don't think they really understand who she is, but they will later on. So that's a lot of advocacy that I do. I talk to intended parents. I try to educate them on, egg donation, surrogacy, and yet actually your picture was used on one of the anti-surrogacy Spanish groups, and people had no idea the story behind it, right? Our pictures were used as well for anti-surrogacy stuff. And these are fights we have to fight every single day.
And a lot of people don't know that in Europe, when we had several referendums about marriage equality, in Ireland, in Italy, in Spain, in France, in Australia, in Taiwan, the no campaign, the people who are against marriage equality, were using the topic of surrogacy against marriage equality. Because a lot of times we're being asked, is there connection between surrogacy and gay issues? We are a lot more visible. We're in fact the only visible surrogacy parents, because heterosexual people who suffer from medical infertility and need eventually also the help of a surrogate, they just pass. They go back to the general population, and many times even are consciously not talking about it. So thank you, Michael, because we were talking about being gay parents before, and now we're talking about surrogacy. So it's the intersection of those two things. Jan, why don't you tell us a little bit about your family and what you do?
So my name is Jan. I work with men having babies, but I also have a podcast with my husband. It's called Daddy Squared, and kind of like Frankie, it happened to us, really. It wasn't something that we planned to do, but what happened for us is that you guys will know that after the first year, you get up and where's everybody? Like you go in the first year of having a baby, and it's like taking a plunge, and you go out of the water and okay, now we can go back to our lives. It's like deconstructions of ourselves as human beings and our parents, and where are our gay friends? And that was for us something that some of them left the city, some of them evaporated. You don't see them, and suddenly you're stuck between these two worlds of the gay world, which is kind of not really understanding you, and the parent world, which is mostly straight. And we were trying in these two worlds to kind of find our place, and we created this podcast initially to create a community for us, and to connect with other gay dads that we couldn't find on our immediate neighborhood, even though it's very gay neighborhood. I live in West Hollywood, but still, people and it's full of gays, and they're all, oh my God, it's so cute, but there was no more of that. We were looking for some community, for people to share our parenting hardship, but also talk about gay stuff. So, and you guys know what I mean. So we started that podcast, and since then it's just happened to us. It's just somehow we took on, and we started getting emails and stuff like that. So that's basically it.
And soon coming to your television screen. What is it, January?
December 15th.
So
Yeah.
Jan and his
We
husband.
took the ultimate parent test. I'm not going to say anything.
They were going to be on a reality show. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to ask you to stay here, and I'm going to invite Matt Berkeley here to join us. And what we're going to do, we're going to pause for a minute. I remember we told you that we always bring some research and into the conversation in a way that allows us to take the anecdotal, the personal testimonies, and you'll hear more testimonies, by the way, tomorrow from parents in the context. Why don't you come up? In the context of how to build a family, but now we want to talk a little bit about what does research show. I mean, do we know about what can we generalize about our experiences, about us being gay parents through surrogacy, within our community, within our respective overlapping identities. And so we're going to try to speed it up a bit, but let me just say that we started about 10 minutes late, so we're going to go about 10 minutes late, so bear with us. So we're going to continue until 6:40. So we're going to first go with Matt here, and I'm going to ask you guys to stay because we're going to have a little discussion after that.
So it's my pleasure to introduce our keynote this evening, Dr. Matt Barclay. He is a licensed clinical professional counselor in the state of Maryland, and he specializes in relational cultural therapy with individuals, with families, and with children. He also holds a PhD in transformative studies, and his dissertation, which is why he's here with us tonight, was titled Gay Men at the Intersection of Marriage Equality, Fatherhood, and Community. He details an 8-month qualitative study that explores the lived experience of gay men up to and beyond their journey into fatherhood. The study explores how these men negotiate connection, like Jan mentioned, with other married gay fathers, with the LGBTQIA+ community, and with the dominant heterosexual community at large. He lives in Maryland with his husband and 2 sons, who are both the product of gestational surrogacy. Please give him a warm welcome from And Having Babies. We're glad to have him with us tonight. We're excited to see what he's going to share.
Well, what a pleasure to be here with all of you tonight. Thank you so much for bringing me here and my son with me. It's a little daunting to actually talk about research that is so near and dear to my heart, but also this is the first time I'm presenting on this research, so I'm a little on the nervous side about it. So I want to take you for a moment and just situate you for a second. My son Aiden is down here in the front row. He's 17. He was born in California through a surrogate. And his younger brother, our son Kieran, was born in India through a surrogate. So I'd like to take you for a moment and kind of pick you right up here and then drop you right in the center of India. Now imagine for a moment that you don't know anyone there, you don't know the language, you don't know the culture, you don't know what to eat, you can't even read anything because it's not in some form of English script. And you find yourself lost. So it is for those of us who become parents as gay men through surrogacy. We are one person here, one person there, one person here in Spain, one in Toronto. We're all over the place, but we're just not together. If we as people strive to become parents and then identify ourselves as parents, there's a process that goes on. This process is the idea of identity formation. So what unites us as fathers, as parents, as men for that matter, is really a set of overlapping identities. Let me tell you quickly about the study. The study, which was way too long. The study involved 8 dads, 9 including me. It was a participatory paradigm study, which meant that I was a part of the study, which is a little weird, but trust me, it worked. There were 9 dads total. Each of us had to have created our families through after we were already with our same-sex partners, and we needed to be married as well. There were a lot of criteria that met. There were guys from the Washington, D.C. area, which most of them were from, and then some from the Connecticut area. And the structure of the study was a collaborative inquiry, which anyone who has done a collaborative inquiry, they will tell you don't do collaborative inquiry. I should have listened to them, but I didn't. I stubbornly moved on. And the collaborative inquiry places the control of the study into the hands of the participants. So I gave up all control of the study. I really struggled with that for a long time because I wanted to make sure that I can tell the lived experiences of these men as authentically as possible. And the only way to do that was to give them control of the narrative. And so that's how the study was formed. The context of this took place in, as we all know, within the Trump administration, shortly after marriage equality, and with this resurgence here in the US of anti-LGBTQ legislation and RFRAs, Religious Freedom Restoration Acts. Give me a quick sec. So let's talk about gay dad identity formation. When I looked through the research, I noticed something very quickly, that those of us who are creating families as openly gay males are really in the minority. When you look at any of the research that's out there about gay dads, for the vast majority of it, it's talking about men who were married to women who created children in that context of that heterosexual relationship and then came out as gay. That's who is represented well in the literature. That's not who we are. We take a different path. So there's this forced choice, that's actually a false choice, that when we face our procreative consciousness, this desire within us to be able to be parents, I don't know about you, but I knew I wanted to be a dad all the way back when I was a teenager. My dad was great. I wanted to do exactly what he had done. So I sat with that choice as well. Do I live a life as being an openly gay male, or do I become a father? And nearly walked down the aisle a couple of times. Well, not really, but close enough. So there's this period of time when there's this questioning happening, where you're faced with that question, do we or don't we move forward with our authenticity and live an authentic life, or do we go ahead and get married? Then the suppression happens. Once we land on a pathway, somehow we just take the part of us that we feel like we can go ahead and bury it, and we bury it. We bury it deep. And for the men who buried their sexuality deep, their procreative consciousness, that identity of a father is what became salient and ruling throughout their life. And for the rest of us, it was our sexuality. And we took that little part of us that wanted to be parents and we buried it deep. Then emergence happens. That's kind of cool. I like that word, emergence. So this emergence happens where what we bury cannot stay buried. And so this desire to become fathers for us rose up and needed to battle in some ways with our current situations. And eventually we find a way to be able to crystallize it, to integrate it all into our personal identities. So when you think about the dads who became fathers through heterosexual identity or through heterosexual marriage, and those of us who did it the other way, and you take that and you kind of parse it out and you look at those who did it through adoption and those who did it through surrogacy, there's really a lot more that unites us than what divides us. There are some noticeable differences, though. We, those of us who form our families through gestational surrogacy, we represent a subculture of a subculture of a subculture of a subculture. Think about that for a second. We are not the mainstream. We are the exception to the rule. And so in that identity of being the exception to the rule, we need to seek out connections with other people. So when I looked at our pride stories, our coming out stories, there was this time in our lives when we wrestle with various struggles, such as the struggle for acceptance, the struggle for legitimacy and for respect. And then there's this false sense of, or this sense of belonging that we also kind of struggle with. Well, those coming out stories actually line up pretty nicely when you compare them. Give me a quick second. There we go. When you compare our coming out stories as gay men to our coming out stories as fathers, as our father identity, we had the same struggles: the struggle for acceptance, legitimacy, respect, the sense of belonging. We have the same personal triumphs, moving from acceptance to tolerance to celebration and then facing our fears. The two line up pretty well. And so the argument I'm making is that we actually have a second coming out process. And I don't know if any of you who have children have had to go to a school or to a clinic or someplace where you are forced to out yourself in a situation that may or may not be safe. You don't know. But you have to talk about, in my case, our health insurance is through my husband. So every time I take my kid or I go to a clinic, I have to say, the insurance is in my husband's name. I don't know if it's safe or not. I'd look around, but I couldn't see anybody now, so that's kind of cool. That was a joke. You can laugh. But ultimately, what we do is reach out for connection with other people. And so when we came out as gay men, we joined our community. We celebrated our pride. We took ownership of our identities, and that became us. But the same process is happening or needs to happen for those of us who are gay dads, especially those of us who do it through surrogacy. So we then find our spokespersons and we bring them up and put them on lovely panels and they get to tell their story. And boy, isn't there power in the narrative? In my research, the thing that I found the most surprising was that individual narratives from these people were gold. In these stories, when people were just literally spilling their guts about their struggles, and many of them dealt with barriers as well. In fact, a common theme was barriers, a lack of support from their families and friends. And I found that rather surprising. I knew in my own family I didn't have a whole lot of support. In fact, when I told them that I had met the man of my dreams and we were 3 months pregnant, that didn't go so well. But it turned out that that same type of lack of support among their closest friends and or their family members was a universal theme. And so I went back into the research and I started looking at, and sure enough, there it was again. In every book out there that's on gay men having babies, you'll find that same theme. And I don't know whether it's because we just are rule breakers or we're pathfinders. I don't really know. But I can tell you it's something that unites us. And it forges an identity within each of us in such a powerful way that we don't even realize it's there. But we know it when we meet another gay dad. There's this instant awareness and this instant understanding of the struggle and the process and everything you had to do in order to be able to make your families. And I just want to add, the struggle doesn't end after we have our kids. Aiden is 17 years old, and I'm still trying to do my second parent adoption for him and our son, Kieran. 17 years later, well, Kieran was born 12 years ago, so 12 years ago, we're still trying to get our second parent adoption done. We're running into all kinds of political stuff. I'll just leave it at that. So, pride is so much more than just identity and parades. It's about community. If we don't have a community to connect with, then we are left to flail. And because we are isolated in one part of the state and another part of the country and in other parts of the world, it's incumbent upon us to reach out and to connect, because it is through connection that we grow. The research was amazing. As I said, that the narratives, as we were reading through them and sharing our stories, they were stories of resilience. There were times when I was reading this stuff and I got goosebumps, and times when I was reading it and I was crying. And I can tell you that it was spectacular and a huge honor to be a part of that process. There was a lack of support, as I mentioned, from families and friends. There were homophobic systems of oppression and state laws and agencies that wouldn't work with them or would go ahead and license, in some cases, the adoptive or foster to adopt parents, but not place any kids with them. And they would languish and wait and wait and wait. The stories were at times very discouraging. But there was a sense of resilience. Also, talking about having to have the talk about racism with our kids who are BIPOC. My son Kieran is half Indian, and so he is a person of color. And he recognizes the fact that he has brown skin and the rest of us have white skin. And so having to have that conversation to make sure that he understands that he is every bit a part of our family in ways that I can't be because I'm not the biological dad. So common experiences also that seem to permeate through gay dads through surrogacy have to do with financial barriers, as we've talked about. And thankfully there's men having babies with their program for financial assistance. Fantastic. A lack of medical information about the egg donor, and in some cases that's thankfully not the case, but in other cases where you deal with an anonymous egg donor, you know nothing. We have a picture. That's it, a picture. She looks like Cameron Diaz. And when you meet Aiden later, you'll understand that he has her smile. So there's this pressure also of being the biogenic parent and the non-biogenic parent. there's a privileging that happens in our society, that we look for cases in ways that we can see that kind of biological track go through our families. And my dad said at one point before we made Kieran, he said, I look at you and I see part of me lives in you as you go on, and I want you to have that experience. So I did. My surrogate didn't become pregnant, but thankfully David's did, my husband David. And so we got Kieran out of the process. I can't see myself in Aiden's face, maybe his hair once, I had hair once, or in Kieran, but I see it in their personalities, in their sarcasm. Am I right? Yeah. My sarcasm, my zest for social justice and all of that. So we see that as something that's really important, and it is another way that we build resilience within our community. So are we co-creating a subculture? One might argue that we are. When you look at the things like symbols or language, norms, values, and artifacts, all indicators of a culture, we start seeing things like our stories. The fact when you see gay dads together, you'll see them with their child between them, or one of them on their shoulders. And if you've ever been on a Facebook page for gay dads, you know that we like to dress alike. It seems to be a thing. Some of the norms also have to do with common milestones to the process, and then some of our values, again, that bilogenetic connection or lack thereof. And I have to say, within the study, every single one of the dads in that study, which included dads who had their children through surrogacy, said, blood does not make a family. I want that on a t-shirt. Blood does not make a family. Love makes a family. So the importance of community for gay dads in their transition parenthood is so much about building growth, fostering communities. Now Alan mentioned in my introduction that I operate as a counselor through using relational cultural theory. That theory is all about connection. Connection is primal to who we are. So if we have growth, fostering relationships with each other as individuals, we have to be able to find a way to have growth fostering relationships with each other as a community. So how can we connect with each other? How can we go ahead and build a sense of community? Well, we could develop cohorts, and as you are finding out that you're going through your process, and our process is so long ago, I forgot what was involved in it. But as you start your process and you're going through the matching, it's important to reach out and find out if there are other people, other gay dads who are going through the same process, because there's real power in cohorts. I don't know if you know this, an interesting fact, that 50% of all PhD students drop out. They don't finish their program. They go all the way up to the ABD part, the all but dissertation part, and then they don't finish. But in programs where they have cohorts, that number shoots way up. In my program, there were 6 of us in a little cohort together, and we did everything together, including like text each other every day, a little too much. But all 6 of us finished the program, which is unusual. So there's power in cohorts. There's power in mentoring, sharing your experience with others. If you have been through the process, you know the process. If you've been through the hell, you know the hell. If you've been through the triumphs, you know the triumphs. Share that. Share your stories. Continue to reach out. Make connections. Make community. And then I guess we'll have intentional families with intentional communities. And guess what? That's social transformation. Thank you all.
We don't have that much time, but
Thank you.
so I want to show you one more slide. I hope there we go. We have a survey that we've been running for quite a few years now. And a lot of you might know that survey because it's also how we generate rating and reviews for agencies, clinics, and other service providers, which is a terrific way for people to learn about other people's experiences. But we also ask people about because those are already our parents, we asked them, what are the activities or support that you would appreciate as a parent? And an overwhelming majority of people stated a desire to keep socializing and getting together with other gay parents who have children. We were members, in fact, MHB started the LGBT community here in New York, where they used to have a program that does that. We actually are hosting some of our conferences around the country, in Chicago, in Florida, are hosted by LGBT community centers. And I have to tell you, none of them have family programs right now, or not very functioning family programs. And in all cases, they're typically programs for gay and lesbian families. And part of the reason we wanted, as people here say also, as you can see from the other results, we wanted those events is because we wanted our kids to see and to be in an environment where they are not a minority, where they can see other families like them. And we live in a mom-centric world. So not only are we gay parents, et cetera, we are also not lesbian parents. We are males. When I took our twins, it was mommy and me, or music together. It was always women around us. So we don't have events right now in most places where we can take our kids and have an environment that they feel that for once they are the majority. Talking to the kids about their origins. You'll hear a teen panel tomorrow where we have kids who are children through surrogacy. They're no longer so much kids, they're young adults almost. And you'll hear even children of surrogates because we want to hear their perspective too. But how to talk to the kids about their origins. You know, a child may think that his surrogate died, or that, you know, we need to be able to tell them the story. We can do that together. We have sessions about it, and we know people appreciate that. So these are a variety. I mean, you can see on the screen, we ran out of time, but we feel that Men Having Babies could serve a purpose going beyond the educational or guidance part of creating the family. And just the way we created Men Having Babies because nobody else was doing it, we also might need to do this because nobody else is doing it. So we have, I think, actually almost no time. Can we spend another 5 minutes if people have questions? Or, okay, why don't we do that? So I would like to see if people have questions from the audience, and it could be addressed to any of us along the lines of what we discussed here. And keep in mind that the more prescriptive how to do this and how to do that will be covered tomorrow. Comments as well. It doesn't have to be a question. Go ahead.
Okay, sweet. So it sounded like there was not going to be as many providers of service who were, I guess, law agencies or law firms, but it seems like there's some. Is that correct, that there are some?
In fact, we have a special expo Sunday with law firms and other providers that are not necessarily agency and clinics. We even have a legal clinic happening Saturday where you can sign up for a consultation or a session with law firms.
Understood. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'd like to comment about
Go ahead.
something. So something that you said that really struck me is that about sharing, and I think that you guys, even at where you are at right now, which is at the very beginning of this whole journey of surrogacy, it's really important for you to share and look for other people who are like you to share your stories. For example, at Men Having Babies, we have this Instagram account, which every day we post a story about the struggle part of the story. So people tell us what was hard for them in their surrogacy journey. And we find that prospective parents really can relate to that, and it's really kind of setting an expectations on what can you face when you get to this stage, and when you do and it looks hard and it is hard, you also see that you are not the only one who faced this. So me and my husband, when we started the podcast, when we started our journey, we knew nothing about surrogacy. We just went to this agency that people told us to, and we did that. And we did the research when we did the podcast. So all of our podcast is like basically we did it after. I really think that part of the journey, part of the research, the beginning stages, is to really look out for these stories. And when you share your story, and it doesn't matter what phase you are in their surrogacy journey, when you share your story, it helps people. I can tell you for sure.
It's visibility and it's education. As Matt was saying, we're the niche of the niche of the niche.
And
We're,
especially when things are hard, because in the age of social media, we only see the happy faces and the smiling babies. But when it comes to the hardship and the challenges, people don't tend to share. So when you're authentic and you really tell people what was hard for you, you'll find it surprising how much, not only support and love that you get back, but how much you help other people as well.
So we have on our website, and that with other resources is going to be covered tomorrow, we have a peer advice network. We have well over 100 families who agreed to speak to families like yours, or families in formation. I presume still most of the people here are not parents yet. And you can go through the database and see people who live next to you, or at least in your state, people who've had specific types of experiences that perhaps resonate with things you're struggling with. So we did run out of time. I'm sorry. This is just a demonstration that this is a very important topic that we need to continue talking about. I just want to tie those two parts together. We have challenges that are the result of the fact that there's a lot that is basically, staked against us. There are a lot of discrimination and a lot of practices that are just tolerated, not necessarily intentional, because people are either not aware of it or, don't think of ourselves, of gay men as deserving or needing to become parents. And there's a community that has a lot in common, even though it is fragmented and not necessarily always around areas where they can gather physically. Luckily, if not before, then after COVID, there are a lot of ways for us to aggregate and to gather. And it is our intention to continue what we've always been doing, but even more so to help aggregate our us together for social purposes as well as for advocacy, so that we can also help people who are coming along us and after us in this same path. So let me first of all thank our terrific panel. Now you know them all and you can approach them. We also want to achieve our purposes through partnering with other organizations. So I want to first mention that we are very proud to have received a grant and the support of the American Society for Reproductive Medicine to create these advocacy and research forums. So this evening is in part possible with their support. I also want to invite EMD Cyrano. We have Elena here. Where is Elena? Sorry. I was misinformed. So I want to thank EMD Cyrano, who's a longtime partner, a supporter of Men Having Babies, a pharmaceutical. He'll tell you quickly about who they are, and they're supporting both this forum as well as the welcome reception you're all going to be allowed to approach in just a few minutes. So come on just a minute.
I promise I'll be very quick so we can get to the drinks and mingling. So good evening, everybody. My name is Julian Riker, and I'm one of two local fertility partnership managers here based in New York City. Elena is the other one. So real quick, just on behalf of EMD Cyrano, thank you to Men Having Babies organization for coordinating this important event. From the inception of the organization, we're proud to say we have been with them the whole way. We have worked to raise awareness and access for family building in this community. So we're just very proud to be a continued supporter of your mission, outreach, and events like this. We prioritize investment in patient access, which you heard a lot of tonight. We understand the importance of education and guidance throughout the family building journey, and we're thrilled to be here. Again, I won't say too much more. Ready to get to the drinks and mingling. So thank you, everybody.
And we also have Damien here from NewGen, who's also a sponsor of our welcome reception. So come on by.
Hi everyone, welcome to this extraordinary event. My name is Damien Chambers. I'm the CEO of NewGen Families. You can tell from my accent I'm not from here, I'm from Australia, but I now reside in Las Vegas. That's where the agency is. First of all, a massive shout out to Ron and Sarah and all of the team at Men Having Babies. These are extraordinary events and we're very blessed to participate in these events, not just here, but globally. We've committed to 4 conferences, I think, next year in San Francisco and in New York. We'll be back here next year, Brussels and also Berlin. And also, I just want to give a personal shout out to Sarah. She has just completed the New York Marathon and raised significant funds for this incredible cause. So please give it up for Sarah. Absolutely amazing achievement. I get puffed just walking up here, so it's a pretty good effort. Just a little bit about us quickly. We are a full service surrogacy agency. What that means is that we offer packages that include all the services required for you to complete your surrogacy journey. I'm not going to keep you too long. One last thing, we're very blessed at the moment to boast a 0 to 3 match time with surrogates. And also, I just want to let you know, our incredible surrogate director is here. Please come and say hi. Her name is Donye Sabo. She's a 2-time surrogate. She's carried twins twice for same-sex couples. Not that we encourage twins, but I'm just saying, please come and say hi. Have a drink on us tonight, and we're very proud. And once again, thank you so much to Ron and Sarah and all the Men Having Babies team. Have fun, and congratulations to you for starting your research into your family building journeys. My son was born via surrogacy a few years ago here in America. Anyway, enough of that. Let's go, have a drink, and enjoy, guys, and come and say hi tomorrow.
So everybody who's sitting here has already been tested, so you can just come by tomorrow. You still have to go through the registration table. However, they should just bring their name tags with them. By virtue of having your name tag, you will not have to be tested, but you do need to come by and let us know that you're here. I also want to mention that those of you who are service providers and are not attendees, unfortunately, we are sold out and full to capacity for intended parents and whoever bought a ticket to be part of the conference. So we will not be able to accommodate exhibitors or sponsors in this room until you can meet them later at the expo. So we're very glad we were able to accommodate as many people as this room basically has capacity for, but that means that service providers will only join us later in the day. Any other housekeeping, Sarah?
So I don't think that all of the attendees, they all have to stick on names.
Okay.
Those are not going to give you back.
Oh, sorry, yes. So I'm sorry. So you will need to get your name tags, your permanent name tags and the program tomorrow morning. I should have known that. But nevertheless, you will not need to test again, so that's the good news. But please don't come last minute because we do need to start in time. You see what happens when we don't. We do want to have these tests because it's still a way to make this environment a little more safe. So please go ahead, enjoy the drinks and the hors d'oeuvres, and we'll see you tomorrow morning.